Good evening and welcome to Dark Hour Paranormal. I am your host tonight, Michael Roser. And this evening I have a long-awaited guest. Several of you have recommended. I have Michael from Conflict Radio with me tonight to discuss his experiences, his thoughts on the paranormal, what got him into this field, and more. So I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. I see many of you in the chat. Thanks for being here, folks. This is going to be one hell of a fun show. And I hope you have a nice cup of tea or coffee or beer, whatever you drink. You're sitting in a nice, comfortable place, and you're ready for a fantastic ride. We're going to do something a little different tonight, too, as you'll notice soon. But without further ado, folks, let's get this party started. All right, so I'm going to set this up right quick, and we're going to have ourselves a good old-fashioned radio show. And you guys can tell me how this works out and let me know what you think about the format in the comments below. And just to let you know, you can find Michael's link to his Conflict Radio show also in the link, and I will provide anything else that we talk in respect to what he does in his work later on after the show. So I'd like to welcome Michael from Conflict Radio. How are you, mate? Good to see you tonight.
I'm good. How are you guys doing today? Good to be here.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you. How was your day today?
It was pretty good. We just got done wrapping up episode 50. So that will be available at the conclusion of this. I'll go over and we'll get episode 50 up and going. So that'll be ready to go over there.
Did you have any guests for this new episode, episode 50?
We had Jared Murphy join us and Muhammad Abraham. Abraham, I guess. He's an Egyptologist.
Excellent. Well, we'll very much be looking forward to that when you post that. And I will also put some promotion out there for you in corresponding groups to get that up and going. Because I actually really enjoy your show, Michael. I've heard several episodes, and I like the way that you interview. I think you take your time. You're very patient with guests, and you're very accommodating. Again, this is my first impression listening to your show. So let me ask you, we're going to do something different. We'll kind of go backwards here. What got you into the field of broadcasting? And then in respect to what we talk about topically, why did you choose to discuss the paranormal and the things that we can't explain as the basis for your broadcasts?
Well, I had always been a listener of Art Bell going back in the day. And, honestly, I guess a lot of the shows weren't asking the questions that I wanted to ask. So I just got into it and started asking my own questions. We were able to get a lot of people on that are on a lot of other places, and I just kind of went at it my own way.
That's awesome. What spurred your interest in the field in general that gave you all these questions that you want to ask?
You mean what happened? I guess
if there was an experience, yeah, sure, right? Yeah, absolutely.
I think I had an abduction experience when I was 19 years old, and I think that I was taken. And since then, I'd been curious and been listening on the subject. I had a network. We had a network on. I see GUFON in the chat. He's like, "Who's Conflict Radio?" GUFON, you know who I am. I carried your show for probably a year. I started up a podcast network where I got all of my favorite podcasts and put them all on a network and just had them all running on a network. I didn't have my own show at the time. I guess I rubbed some people the wrong way and got a year's suspension from YouTube. And when that was lifted, instead of doing the network, I decided to come back with my own show.
Was there some reason that they had taken you off in respect to posting content that they considered not something that we could post in the way of fair What's the word I'm looking for? Fair trade. That's not it, but you know what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah. Some people say
Fair
that.
use.
I guess no. Every show I posted, I had permission to post, except for one that I thought should be allowed to be posted.
Hmm.
So I posted that show and posted that show for years and years and years. And I guess they wanted to do their own YouTube channel, so that was the end of that. But when that ended, YouTube decided to come after me. I guess that's when YouTube started doing the ad apocalypse.
Hmm.
And I had some stuff up there, I guess from years before, that doesn't let that you can't talk about on YouTube anymore. And I guess we can't talk about the content, or I'd tell you, but then they make your stuff go away. So
Right.
you know how YouTube is nowadays. It's not as I guess a free a platform as it used to be.
No, it's definitely changing, and we're seeing many signs of that, even in the live applications. And for certain reasons, I won't go into exactly what those are, but for those of you that it's affected already, you know exactly what it is. And I don't think we have anything better coming, but we'll see what happens as we move forward. So you mentioned that you feel that you were an abductee of sort. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience and maybe share some detail of why you think this actually happened to you in this fashion?
Yeah, I kind of keep it close to the chest, honestly. I'll tell you what I can. I haven't done any kind of hypnotherapy, regression, anything like that. All I can tell you is that I went to bed and had a horrible experience. It wasn't a friendly experience. It was mean. It was brutal. And normally when you have, now I'll be honest, I don't have any idea if this was a dream or something I was experiencing. That I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What I do know is that every time I have a horrible dream, I wake up, right? Don't you?
That's the idea.
I could not wake up. I could not wake up. What seemed like hours and hours. I
Was it like
could
a
not
sleep
wake up.
paralysis of sort?
No, I don't think so. I honestly think that I was taken. I think that I had an implant. You could feel it moving around afterwards. It would change locations. I guess a few years ago, I had the experience again, and the implant's been gone. So I don't know if they took
Oh,
it or if they maybe changed it or did something different. But since the second time, I haven't had the issue with the implant.
that's very curious because a lot of times we'll hear people suggest what you're saying, that they have the implant, and very few of them will come back and say, well, it was taken out of me at some point. From the point that you feel you had that implant to the point where it was taken out, did you notice any emotional difference in yourself? Did your personality change or anything about your physicality kind of raise red flags in, thinking there's a foreign object in your body, or did it seem to kind of vibe naturally with the body you have?
You could definitely tell that it was something. It was something different. You could feel it in places. Like sometimes you could feel it in the back of your neck. There'd be like a lump or
Hmm.
something there, and then a couple hours later, it would slowly be moving somewhere else. You can literally feel it moving. And then it would go somewhere else. Sometimes you'd lose it for a while. You wouldn't know where it was
Hmm.
for a little while until it showed up somewhere else. But it wasn't creating any physical abnormalities, or I guess it didn't hurt, if
Hmm.
that makes any sense.
Well, it makes as much sense in so far as what we're speaking about. You know what I mean? But you would associate a pain with having a foreign object in your body. And again, I find that with people who are reporting this sort of experience, they're not finding pain associated with it. Do you think that there's a possibility that when we are taken in this fashion that we're numbed up? Or do you think it's more psychological in respect to the effect that the extraterrestrials have on us for the certain purpose that they're using?
I think that their technology is so advanced that it can be programmed or made specifically for you, so that you're not having any type of I guess like if you get a bad liver or something, you have a transplant, your body's going to have issues.
Hmm.
Well, not if they actually grow that from your DNA, you're not going to have any issues. So, with their technology, I mean, there's no telling what they, what they could do that, whether it has a numbing agent that's constantly, being used as it moves around. Who
Hmm.
knows?
Well, one of the reasons I ask this is because recently we've heard the story of Kenneth Pass, and in his description, he mentions the first time he's on the craft, something is inserted into his nostril and it cracks something up within his skull, and his eye actually falls out, and he's there standing looking at his eye. Um, Again, there was no mention of any pain of any sort, so I thought that was very interesting. That the possibility of extraterrestrials having that technology or spirituality to keep us from feeling that, it's just an interesting idea. Now, let's talk a little bit about why we think extraterrestrials might be here in the more general sense, because of course you have your experiences, I have my experiences, and each of us could sit on a side of the fence and say we're convicted. But in a general sense, and we're talking about UFOs as well, why don't we, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Why should or why shouldn't we believe that extraterrestrials are among us right now?
Well, we don't know that extraterrestrials are among us right now. There's a highly intelligent species among us, I believe, but
Hmm.
they could be from Earth already. As Jared Murphy says in his book, Not Aliens, It's Us. There's much evidence of a highly technically advanced civilization that's been on Earth before, and there's no telling where they're from. We
Hmm.
know that there's something here, but that doesn't mean it's from off world.
Right. Right,
If-
exactly. In respect to where these beings might be, if they're here with us on this physical plane, do you think they might exist in a multidimensional sense and are, essentially using the same space that we are, but in a different vibration? Or do you think that they have a physical component and maybe live inside the caverns of the earth? Or if you subscribe to the hollow earth theory, maybe they have civilizations in there. What do you think?
I think it could be all of the above. I mean, you can't rule out any of what you just said, honestly. I mean, you have Mount Shasta. There's definitely something going on there. Is there a hollow
Hmm.
Earth, or is there just pockets of hollowness within the Earth that these bases are? If that's the case, if they are extraterrestrial, they could be using the pockets in the hollow Earth to have bases, I
Hmm.
guess, or whatnot. But yeah, I mean, interdimensional things, we know that happens. We know that there's interdimensional stuff. I mean, if you look at we did a show on the Moonite people. These short. I mean, kind of. I guess Ireland would know them as the leprechauns, and Hawaii has their name for them. And the Cherokees say that they're interdimensional beings, and they use portals to go back and forth between worlds, and that's the Cherokee.
Hmm.
You know.
I think looking at the native cultures of the area is probably our best bet to understand what we might be experiencing now. Because, as I've mentioned before in other broadcasts, if you have a people that have been living in one area for hundreds and hundreds of years, and those tribes were kept pretty close within, you know what I mean? There wasn't a lot of mixing depending on where you were. So traditions stayed very tight, and legend and stories of, their origin also stayed pretty tight. When we're referencing, I'm sorry, when we're talking about, these topics, and we really want to find who was there first, the indigenous people, I think, is the best place to go. Even for, let's say, cryptids and so forth. So,
Yeah, I suppose if there's one cryptid that I really don't believe in, I guess anymore, would be Bigfoot. I don't. I mean, there's so many people out, and I know a lot of people are probably going to. I mean, I'm going to set the chat on fire with that one, but so many people out looking for Bigfoot. now. We have all these Bigfoot shows. Everybody's in the woods with their cameras.
Mhm.
Where is it? I mean, there's no evidence anymore. There's no footprints being found. There's no home. I mean, you'd think somebody would stumble upon a den or something at least. Some people might think that, oh, well, they're just a native ape of North America. Well, okay, well, where's its home?
Mhm. That's interesting you say that, and you are certainly lighting a fire with that, but that's great. It's good fuel for discussion. I'll be honest with you, I'm actually sitting on the exact opposite side of the spectrum with this. I think, if anything, Bigfoot might be the most credible cryptid, and there's a whole host of reasons, but the first that I can think of is that there is a biological identification in the sightings of this. Now, maybe we don't have a Bigfoot in captivity, we don't have a body. But there are other bits of evidence that people have brought forward that suggest that something like this is out there. And then again, that's not to discredit their own personal experiences. There are many folks out there who believe they have some sort of personal relationship with this being, and that they can walk into the habitat and know when they're welcome and know when they're not welcome. But some of the sightings, again, will talk about male and female. There's a distinction between the sexes. There are juveniles that are out there running around. If you're not subscribed to the Bigfoot phenomenon, what cryptid do you think is most plausible?
Leprechaun?
The leprechaun. Okay. Now, why
Yeah.
would you say that?
Well, I mean, there's credible stories of them all over the world. I mean, look at, they found 100,000 graves in eastern Tennessee in the early 1800s, and they were all less than 3 feet tall.
But weren't people especially in certain regions, a bit shorter back then?
Less than 3 feet tall?
I mean, we had many different. I mean, if that graveyard is actually left over from that specific time period, I could see where you're going with this. But if it's older than that, there is a
No,
possibility,
it's
because
not
we
from
had.
that time period. They was discovered in that time period.
Well, that's even okay. So that I'll go that direction then. There's a lot in humanity's history that suggests that we had sort of offshoots of our own race, and there are places that people have discovered. What you might call a gnome today. A figure that with a statue that's very small, but they all shared that same trait. Now, generally, they were isolated to certain areas, such as islands, to give an example. But in respect to that, who knows? Maybe those ancient civilizations were, that's what they looked like, and perhaps that they were buried, and that's what we're looking at today. And I guess I'm sort of kind of getting to the idea of why it is that would indicate leprechauns, though.
Well, I just think that there's more evidence to support it than Bigfoot. A funny thing is that, have you noticed, though, within the last few years, the sightings of all the cryptids have gone down?
I thought there's actually an increase
You think so?
in sightings. Yeah, well, in my experience, that's what I've come across.
I don't know. It just seems like there's so many people and there's so many camera phones and so many people out there looking for these things that
Mhm.
if they were out there, I think in the numbers that they should be, I think we'd see more of it. But I mean, I don't know.
No, that's a very good observation. And yet, if there's another element to these beings that would be elusive, that could explain why we're not actually catching them. At the moment, we're just getting fleeting glimpses of these beings. So if you don't believe in Bigfoot because you don't feel that there's really enough physical evidence to support that, I'd like to know how that differs. Really, coming back to the leprechauns in terms of evidence that makes you believe that that's what it is. And I'm not saying you're wrong, man, at all, because I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know either. I mean, I'm trying to guess. I guess the Loch Ness monster could be a real possibility too. I mean, who knows? I mean, to be honest, I think all of this stuff is interdimensional, or it's all there. We just can't see it because we can only see in 3D, and we know we live in a 5D world.
Can you talk a little bit about that, actually?
well, the whole world, you know, I mean, our eyes only see 3D. We don't see, we can't see everything that's there. Plus, our
Hmm.
consciousness, I don't think we're experiencing consciousness the way we're supposed to. I think that only using a small percent of our brain, we're not able to consciously be what we should be. We're not what we were,
Hmm.
if that
I
makes sense.
No, I absolutely agree with you on that. For so many reasons, I agree with you on that. And it actually flashed the idea of the indigo child in my mind while you were mentioning that. What are your thoughts on the indigo children who seem to have different codons or extra codons in their DNA, alight and are immune to disease? They have psychic activity. Their ESP is just through the roof, maybe even the intelligence, their ability to create and invent. What are your thoughts on those considered to be indigo children?
Honestly, I don't have an opinion either way. I haven't done any research in them at all.
Okay.
It's never
Yeah,
come
fair
across
enough.
my desk yet, if that makes any sense. So I'll reserve my opinion until I'm more educated on the subject.
Absolutely. Hey, fair enough. And that's the right way to go. All right. Well, keeping on the subject of children, here's something that's always fascinated me. What are your thoughts on the black-eyed children? Because I don't find a whole lot of evidence on these other than stories, but those stories are terrifying. What do you think?
Well, they say just talking about them makes them real. That's what they say. You're not going to really see a black-eyed kid until you've heard of the black-eyed children, right?
Hmm.
At least that's what some people suggest.
Hmm.
I'm still waiting to see mine. I haven't seen them. It is a very scary. I mean, the stories that I've heard on these things are scary.
Yeah.
They're absolutely I guess just scary. I guess there's really no other word for it. It's incredible. I've heard, it seems like that's most of the stories I've heard come from colder areas.
Mm.
And I don't know
Interesting.
if that has anything to do with it, but most of the stories that I've heard, people that have come out and said they've seen these beings have been in colder areas like Norway or Finland,
Hmm.
Iceland, Canada, North America in the wintertime. You don't really hear black-eyed kid stories coming out of South Florida or the Caribbean or
Hmm.
Cairo, you
Hmm.
just don't. And that's something that maybe we should think like does the cold give certain beings more power to manifest themselves? Who knows?
Now we're thinking. I like that. That's way outside the box. And, we need more thoughts like that in our field to try to, kind of put together the consistencies that we're finding. In this case, them showing up in places that are very cold. Where do you think they're from?
I don't have any idea where they're from. Like I said, they could be here all along. We just, only certain people can see them, or we're not supposed to see them. Um, I definitely I do believe in good and evil. I believe that there's real evil in this world, and I
Hmm.
believe that they're more on the evil side of things. If that makes, I mean, there has to be good and evil, right? I mean, there's good people, there's evil people, there's good beings, there's evil beings. It's a seesaw,
Hmm.
of good and evil on the world, and you try to. I mean, the world is in balance, whereas it has just as much good as it has evil, but there is evil out there, and I think that's where it comes from. I think it comes from the evil side of the seesaw.
Very curious. When you look at the duality that we exist in, we do see a polarity. It's very stark. It's right in front of us. There's, the right and the left. There's the good and the bad, the up and the down, and so forth. I don't necessarily know that it's evil itself. Sort of in the word sort of implies that there's an outside intent that is controlling the individual or whatever you're calling evil. In my opinion, I think some of these energies are really just anchored into lower vibrational states that don't necessarily fit uh, with certain symmetry within the third dimension, other than they're existing to reflect the opposite side, which is what's preferable. So, most of these experiences we have, it's either preferable or it's not preferable. We choose one or the other. And of course, most of us choose the preferable experiences. But I think there's a lot of trauma that brings people down. And, when you talk about energy and, how far, your own thoughts can spiral you, you might act out in an evil manner. It doesn't necessarily make you at your core, which I think all of us are like. Again, this is my opinion. We, may come from one source. So essentially we'd be acting out a part. But that's my thought on that. Very, very interesting that you bring that up. So, I mean, the black-eyed kids are really curious. They are terrifying, as we mentioned, and, they could be interdimensional. I have yet to see one myself, but out of everything that we can discuss, I'll be honest, that is the one that freaks me out the most. That and missing people. No, thank you.
Well, missing people, I think, I mean, you go right into your Sasquatch and Bigfoot theories there, don't you?
You can also go into theories that indigenous people of certain areas have mentioned that, the landscape itself is alive. It was suggested, and I'm chuckling here because it is a little out there, but again, we're talking about out there things. That the rocks, there are certain rocks that are sort of sentient, or there are beings that sort of control these areas and have league over the rocks. And if you stand on one of these, they can suck you up, and there's a good chance you're never getting out. Now, again, these are sort of legend, but they come from indigenous stories. So, I think, again, there's something to look at, and I don't think rocks are necessarily eating people, but you know what? I don't know where these folks have gone missing. What do you think the majority of these cases are? Do you think there's some sort of esoteric principle, or do you think there's just a physical anomaly that occurred? Somebody got hurt, an accident, lost. What do you think?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think there's a lot of missing kids all around the world because of nefarious reasons that YouTube probably won't let you talk about. I think a lot of people go missing. And a lot of people disappear because quite frankly, there's a lot of human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on in natural parks? I mean, who really knows? I mean, could they be being beamed up and moved to another planet? I mean, that's possible, isn't it? Or they're going through a doorway that just puts them into a parallel dimension that, I guess, just puts them on another Earth in another time and in another dimension. I mean, that's interesting stuff. I mean, I don't think there's any telling what's really going on, until, I mean, some of the people that go missing, they come back. I mean, we've heard Travis Walton's story and a lot of these other stories. I mean, there's no telling.
Absolutely.
Do you think the Earth is alive? Do you think the Earth is a living thing?
I do. I believe it is sentient, and it leads its own existence in the same way that our bodies are alive, and yet other organisms live and thrive off of it. Do you hold the same opinion?
Yeah, and I think it's growing, actually. Wouldn't the Earth technically be getting bigger over time?
If it followed the same natural course as what, perhaps our organic bodies that we can observe here do, possibly. I don't know if it's the same thing, though.
Well, I mean, trees grow out of nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they fall down, they decay, they make dirt, or some people think that all the stuff eventually turns into oil or whatnot. But I mean, all these layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of decay that we are now living on. I mean, what was the Earth like before the first layers of decay?
I see where you're going with this.
You know what I mean? So wouldn't it just be getting bigger with just decay?
The way you're explaining it, if there was no other way to kind of push this debris aside and it was, compounding and piling up, yeah, it would make sense that the Earth would at least, be, getting a bit more husky, if you will.
I mean, these are questions that I have. Is the reason why I started my podcast.
No, that's fantastic. I love it, man. I want
to know if the Earth is getting bigger, if the Earth is alive. Does it breathe? Now
that's an interesting one, because there are many who will tell you that the Earth, at both of the poles, it pulls prana in. And for those of you who are not aware of what prana is essentially the life force energy that we're kind of disconnected to at this point. But there have been plenty of yogis who have said, if you're able to harness this prana and anchor it into what's known as your dantian, which is by the center of your body, just underneath your belly button. It's the center of gravity, actually. If you're tapped into that, you may not need to sleep. You may not need to eat. It's just a pure life force energy that nourishes you, and you can sustain on that. On that
You're
alone,
talking about living on light.
it's essentially living on light. Yes. So I think that
some people do this. Some people actually do this. They don't eat or drink anything. They actually live on light. Have you interviewed anybody that's talked about that yet?
I've not talked to anybody directly that is, I think what is the term called? Light gazer? There's something like that, right?
I'm not sure.
I can't remember, but yes, you're absolutely right. I haven't spoken to anybody about that. How about yourself?
No, I haven't. But I mean, I have talked about it on the show, and that's a fascinating idea.
It seems dangerous at first glance.
I think it was Robert Stanley, the show I did with Robert Stanley. You need to get him on and talk to him about it.
Okay.
He's an interesting character anyway.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I will reach out to him and see if he's interested, because that's a very interesting concept. I mean, if we can abandon some of the natural needs that we have that sometimes cross into desire, eating, sleeping, and perhaps even reproduction, okay, or the act of, let's just say that, if you don't need any of these things to survive, and you can live just on light, I mean, that's huge. That could change the entire planet. But I wondered what kind of diet these people go into before they start weaning themselves off solid food to really anchor into that light that they're seeing. And a lot of these folks, for those, again, who don't know, they target the dawn, and they'll target the evening, the sunset, as the most energized times, and they'll just gaze at the sun. They're not looking directly at it, but they'll gaze at the sun, and through this sort of light meditation, they're actually pulling in energy, and they get stronger. But it's curious, man.
Yeah, there's so much. So what? I'm going to turn the tables on you a little bit. What got you into podcasting?
I've been into radio for many years through various means, and I've covered different topics in doing that. But I've always had the fascination with the paranormal, UFOs, spirituality, black projects, you name it. And it took me a little while to really get to the point where I decided that I would be able to do this in that respect. And that's how I started getting into this format. But I'm an experiencer in the respect that I've had many experiences and, things I can't explain that, just like you, I have questions about. So I also wanted to start something that asked the questions that others weren't, and really dig deeper into some of these more high profile guests who should have the answers, in the way that they're talking. So that was always my interest. And of course, it started with Coast to Coast back in, let's see, I think it was 1992 or 93 that I actually found the program, on the radio, and I was just enthralled.
Yeah, it was back in the good old Art Bell days.
Oh, I know it. We all miss him so.
I tried doing a live call-in show. I guess some people in your chat room might have caught it on YouTube, where I just did open lines and just threw the number up on the YouTube channel like, hey, go ahead and call. What a disaster that turned out to be.
Oh, man.
Nobody can do that like Art Bell did anymore.
No, he had the gift of gab, and he had the most impeccable timing when it came to working with guests in respect to getting them on the phone, getting information that they were calling in to talk about, and then getting them off. There's not many people who can do that sort of thing. But these days it's different. We're not sitting at a switchboard. Most of us aren't sitting at a switchboard in a radio studio, playing with phone lines like we used to do. So this is different. You're interested in the paranormal as well? Is that correct?
Yeah, of course.
So the first thing I'm going to ask you is the hot topic, the biggest question out there right now that I can see, and that is, do you believe that there is any connection between extraterrestrials and the paranormal?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's all. I think it all runs together. It all has to do with our consciousness. I don't think that this is. I think they've always been here. I think the Egyptians had a consciousness that we're so far from today. Be it, whatever's wrong with our water or wrong with our food,
Hmm.
that is preventing us from being our full selves. I think they've always been here. I think it's all related. I think it's all related, man. I think once we see one, once we're able to see one, we're able to see it all. Whether it be a shadow person or an alien or
Hmm.
I mean, they're out there. I think they're all out there. Ghosts I think are different because I think ghosts are it's like a negative, like a picture, like an imprint, like a stain on the timeline.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like they've just made an impression. It's like me sitting here in this chair talking on this radio. In 100 years, somebody in this house might look over in this room and see somebody sitting in a chair, like they're talking to nobody
Hmm.
because the microphone's not there, because the desk isn't there. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Hmm.
just gonna make a stain on this reality, and anybody that comes here in the future will be able to see this stain. It doesn't mean I'm stuck here. It doesn't mean that I'm a ghost. It just means that I was once part of that reality, and I was once in that location at that time and left my mark.
Do you think that the apparitions have sentience? Because the way you're talking, it really reminds me of a residual haunting.
I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know. There's so many questions that nobody has the answer to, really. And I don't want to go on like I think I know, because I don't. I mean, that's why we host the shows. We're
No,
just
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, this is exactly the reason we do the shows. And, it's a safe place, I think, to play with ideas, too. There are many times somebody will ask me, in my opinion, on something. Obviously, like you did earlier, if I'm not at all educated on the subject, I might not get into it. But if I have a thought, it's okay to share those thoughts. They don't have to be right. You know what I mean? We can just have the discussion about it.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about shadow people in relation to the paranormal world. Do you think that shadow people that folks are reporting are the same as ghostly apparitions, or do you think they kind of share their own space?
I think that it's a glimpse into a different dimension,
Hmm.
if that makes any sense.
Hmm.
I honestly think that there's a reality for every possibility. That's what I think. I think that for every, like, okay, let's just say I didn't do this show tonight
Hmm.
and I
Yep.
decided to do something else instead. Okay. There's a reality where I didn't do this show. There's a reality where I didn't do my show.
Hmm.
There's a reality where nobody in the chat room is in the chat room. You know what I mean? For every
Sure do.
possibility, there's a different reality, and I think sometimes shadow people are just a glimpse into a different dimension, into a different reality. I think we're that close. I think the lines are that close.
Is I always come back to this one figure that is so controversial, but I do believe what he wrote about has a lot of weight if you look at it the right way. And that's the author Carlos Castaneda, who at one point had mentioned that some of these otherworldly dimensions that might be very close to us were very accessible through dream. But there was a discipline that you had to go through in order to experience these dimensions because they were so vastly different than our human experience that the mind itself had a difficult time comprehending and sinking into the paradigm and the parameters that were there. So, yeah, I have to agree with you on that we could be looking at a different reality that in the respect to like string theory or something like that, where you're saying all possibilities could actually exist. I tend to lean towards that as well myself. Um, the question is this, and this is something I think about quite often. So if we have many different lives, okay, I'm just going to try to simplify this for the sake of the
You mean
example.
like reincarnation?
Yes. Yes. So
Okay.
let's say our one consciousness is experiencing many different personalities and many different lives, okay? And with the idea that that experience is not linear because we can talk about other lives and so forth, uh, that would mean that there's some sort of, how do I put this? In front of us, I see like a dulcimer, okay? Many, 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 many strings, each of those representing a possible experience of a lifetime. So all of these are existing in front of you. Everything exists at once in the moment. Okay. There's no past and future. How does the consciousness decide which string it's going to pluck at what point? Do you know what I mean? How does, if I'm living all of these lives simultaneously right now, what part of me decided that its consciousness is going to be focused here in this body in this life? What do you think?
Well, that just goes. That's if we did them all at the same time. We might not be doing them all at the same time.
But that
We
would
might,
suggest that it's linear.
yeah, or excuse me, or the different dimension. Like the different dimension, me is a different consciousness.
Uh-huh.
It's a different soul. It's not the same soul. It could be a totally different soul.
But it is still connected to you and is still part of you. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's. I mean, the body's just a body, right? The
Right.
body has nothing to do with the soul.
Right.
So it could be a different soul in those different bodies.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know
I
if that
see what
makes
you're
any
saying.
sense.
No,
I had a quantum jumping experience once. Do you know what that is?
uh I mean I can maybe derive something from what you mentioned, but if there's something more specific, no, I don't.
Quantum jumping is an interesting thing, and it's the reason that actually the real reason why I started up Conflict Radio was because I had this weird experience where I was going from dimension to dimension,
Oh,
trying to figure out how to get into the right dimension where I was supposed to be. And I did
okay.
this, I guess, subconsciously, and I couldn't figure it out. I mean, I'm telling you, it seemed like years that I was stuck in the in between, like the world in between dimensions. And I was going from door to door, like I was opening up one door, going in, like, no, this isn't mine.
Hmm.
And I'd go to the next one, open that up, like, no, this isn't mine. And I would actually run into myself in some of them and know right away it wasn't mine because myself wasn't anything like me, if that makes any sense.
Yes. Yes, it does.
And
Yes.
the reason why I got out, I actually got out of that. I wound up running into some dude, and he was in the in between as well, and he saw my frustration and what I was happening. He said, "Look, you're quantum jumping. This is how you get back to yours." And then right away, I was back in mine. But he said when you get back, come find me at Cornell and we'll talk about it. He was a researcher at Cornell University, and
So
I never did find the guy.
was was this predominantly a physical experience, or were you experiencing it through dream or meditation?
Um, through I was sleeping.
This is okay.
Yeah, so I was completely, once I found my way back to this dimension, it was like no time had passed and I had woke up.
And yet it felt like years.
Yeah, years.
Wow.
And I researched the crap out of this, and I had never heard of quantum jumping before. And I woke up and I researched it. I'm like, oh, well, that's it's got to be a thing. And I looked it up, and I could hardly find anything about it. Hardly. I mean, if you search quantum jumping, I mean, there's a little bit out there, but there's not much at all. Not much to where what I was experiencing. In
Mhm.
fact, if you research quantum jumping now, you'll probably get a bunch of conflict radio stuff because that was what that's been one of my main topics, getting guests on and such, just to talk about this and learn about what quantum jumping was, because I thought that was fascinating. But my point that I was trying to make is that I was going from dimension to dimension trying to find this one, and I would run into versions of me, and I'd be like, "Oh my god, this guy's a complete freaking asshole." And I don't know if I could say that
Yeah,
on your show. I'm
you
sorry if I
can.
can't,
No,
but
you
I
can.
was, and I was like, "Wow, what a jerk that guy is." He'd be like, "You need to get out of here. This is mine." this is my, this is my dimension. You got to get out of here. And then I would go and I try to find another one. And I would go into some, like where my mother was alive, or, certain people were dead that weren't dead, and I knew, oh, well, this isn't the right one. Everything's right except for this, and then poof, as soon as I realized I wasn't in the right one, I was back in the in-between again.
Holy shit, man. This is blowing my mind.
Yeah, it was totally weird. And and I talk about it. I talk about it all the time. I talk about it all the time. It was by far one of the most surreal experiences I've ever had. And I'll talk about, my little abduction experience. Honestly, I couldn't tell you if the abduction experience was a dream or not. I could honestly not tell you if it was a dream or not, but this was not a dream. This was something different.
Well, if you're already going through, or you have the experience of what you're describing as quantum jumping, and then you say you also feel like you had an abduction experience, I mean, if you're able, if there's something within you that has the inclination to do the quantum jumping, it would stand to reason that you might have an experience otherwise of a similar magnitude, in this case the abduction. So it doesn't seem so strange to me.
Yeah.
You know
But
what I mean? Connecting.
I'll always mention that dude at Cornell, because maybe one day he'll listen and he'll reach out to me like, yeah, that was me.
Do you have a name for him? I mean, you don't have to tell me.
No,
I'm
he never
I'm
gave me a
asking.
name. He just
No.
told me to find him at Cornell. He's a researcher at Cornell.
So what did you do to try and find him once you got back to your own reality?
I went to the Cornell, you go to the Cornell University webpage, you start looking up, obviously they didn't have anything in there on quantum jumping. So you try to figure out, okay, well, who's in their physics department. You start going through pictures. Maybe you'd recognize, a professor or somebody down there. But I mean, I wasn't just going to send blind emails to somebody like, hey, did I run into you, while I was quantum jumping? I didn't do that. So other than look at Cornell, look at their website, look at, try to Google quantum jumping and Cornell all at the same time, try to find somebody, from Cornell that had interest in the subject, but I couldn't find anything.
Why do you think this happened to you? Was there some sort of trigger that you might be able to attribute to the beginning of your quantum jumping experience?
No, I certainly don't. And I wish I knew what it was, because I've been trying to do it again ever since.
Interesting. What's something that you learned from going through that experience, either during that or in retrospect?
I think what I know I learned is that the possibilities are endless, and that the dimensions are endless. There's no shortage of different dimensions. There's plenty of them. And I think that every possibility, every different possibility that, like, oh, I wish, my mother died. So let's just say, oh, I wish that, I would be able to see what my life looked like, had my mother survived, and but somewhere there's a dimension where she did survive, and that life lived,
Oh, wow. So you were interacting with other versions of yourself in these dimensions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you didn't, I mean, I start thinking about, the time travel paradox. When you meet yourself, something happens, cancellation, something gets uprooted, but you didn't find any discontent in that experience, and that, insofar as that.
Yeah, well, I wasn't time traveling.
Right. I'm kind of trying. Yeah, my brain's sort of putting.
It's a little different, I think. When time traveling and quantum jumping, I think, are two totally different things.
Why do you think so?
Related at all? Well, because time travel is you're going back and forth in the dimension that you're currently in. Quantum jumping is you're going back and forth between dimensions. From different dimensions. It's the same time, but it's a different dimension. That's what quantum jumping is.
Okay.
It's like that. I guess there was an old movie or an old TV show. I think it was called Quantum Jump or something like that.
Oh, Quantum Leap. Yes.
Quantum Leap. Yeah. It's kind of the same thing, right? Where they're going from dimension to dimension, trying to find their way back.
Yes. It actually. I remember that.
exactly. I think that was based, I think, on real science. I think somebody I think there are people out there that know what's going on and they're not talking.
Hmm.
You
Oh,
know, there are real
certainly.
people out there, you know, whether it be the elites. I mean, we obviously have elites, you know,
Hmm.
whether the extra, you know, extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings or whatever. You
Hmm.
know, I think people can move from or not people, but beings can move from dimension to dimension, and it's nothing to them. It's like you and I, you know, we wake up, we're experiencing different days. You know, we go to bed, we wake up, we're in a different day. It's no big deal. It's just a different day. You know, they go from dimension to dimension. You know, maybe they go to sleep, they wake up in a different dimension. They go to sleep, they wake up in a different dimension. You know,
That's actually, yeah, that's been proposed. I've heard that theory before, that actually every day you wake up, you're kind of coming into a new reality. And that being said, that we're constantly shifting dimensions every moment. We just don't realize it because the transition is so subtle. What that might imply is jumping, between these different strings to eventually, make this zigzagging path that we can isolate as, one experience or one lifetime.
yeah,
So,
that's exactly true, and that's where the Mandela effect comes in.
yes, yes,
Like
yes.
we all do a quantum jump together. You know, where wasn't it just like this? Wasn't this the way it was? And all of a sudden it's like, no, it's not. Was it Bernstein Bears
Yeah.
or not? You know, like wasn't it Bernstein Bears?
Bernstein. I mean, Bernstein. I mean,
Which one
God,
is it?
that one messed me up too when I first saw it. I went back and I started looking through my old books as well, and I remembered it incorrectly too. So, I'm not really resolved on the Mandela effect, although I think it's really interesting, and I do believe that there is something there. Maybe in the same frame as like a pareidolia in a respect, but maybe
Yeah.
there's a lot more to it. But then again, pareidolia in itself exists for some reason. If it's not, if it doesn't have an esoteric angle to it, then perhaps a survival angle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's curious.
I mean, it's fascinating stuff. That's all Mandela effect is. It's just a bigger quantum jump. It's just all going on a quantum jump, not just one person. If one person does it, you're quantum jumping. If we all do it, it's a Mandela effect.
Do
But
you
it's
think? Oh, sorry.
all
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said I was just finishing up, but you know, it's all if we all do it, it's a Mandela effect. But if just one of us do it, it's just quantum jump.
Do you think that we are evolving as a collective consciousness, or do you think that our evolution is really based on the individual?
No, I think we're coming about. I think we're getting close. I
What's
think
the end? Yep.
I think we're lucky. We're living in a time of the Great Awakening, and when I say
Mm.
that, I'm talking about I think in 100 years, we're going to be able to communicate with each other with our minds. I think we're evolving to a point where we used to be. If that makes
Yes.
any sense.
Makes complete sense.
We're learning about frequency. You know, we're moving things with frequency now. It's being done. You know,
Hmm.
you know, it's not somebody playing a flute and look, this building's moving, you know, or this block or whatever. But we're able to do it now at a certain point, and pretty soon, I think we're gonna be able to communicate with each other without even picking up a phone. We'll just be able to think about it, think about who we want to talk to, and we'll be able to talk to them. I think we're evolving as a human species. I really do.
Do you think that relates to possibly moving up in the dimensions? I mean, there's been much talk about the Earth moving from a third dimensional state within the last 30 years, according to the 1111 phenomenon specifically, going into a fourth dimensional state. Do you think that is I'm sorry, do you think what we're talking about in terms of people being able to communicate on that level is indicative of the whole uh, evolution into another dimension?
Well, we're definitely moving into a higher plane. Yeah.
Hmm.
You know, you know, it's all of us. We're see what's happening is the Earth, as we fly around the cosmos, we're the Earth is moving into a more light, if that makes any sense. From darkness to light, there's these light streams that flow through outer space, like veins in your body
Mm-hmm.
that move light, and the Earth is moving into a light vein, so to speak. And that's what's gonna, once we're further into the light, it's gonna change everything. It changes everything for our consciousness and everything. And I think that's what
Yep.
happened. I think that's what happened to us.
I'm right there with you. I've been talking about that for many years, and I really truly believe that that's where we're headed. It just seems like the natural evolution. And if we look at extraterrestrials that we consider to be more advanced than us, not only by technology but perhaps in spirituality, as some people report, it's been said that's sort of what different civilizations go through on different planets. Each of them experience this darkness and this light in their own way, but they all go through the same phases and they have duality at one point in time. Very quickly, and I'm going to say this wrong, okay? Magoyan, and that's not that. It's Magoyan. I'm sorry, I'm butchering this, but the monster, he asks, what is the 1111 phenomenon? Now, are you familiar with this at all, Michael?
Yeah, I've heard about it. It's the idea everybody's seeing 1111, right?
Yep.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's the beginning of it. Yes.
1111. Mm-hmm. They've been talking about this for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I don't know if there's any I don't know if there's any truth to that or not. I mean, you got to admit, seeing 1111 is a lot easier to see than 234.
Well, it might be, but okay. So there's a couple of things that I've learned about this, and the first interpretation is the 1111. When you see it, most people think, oh, it's good luck. Okay, maybe something good's coming my way, or it's an affirmation that I'm where I'm supposed to be at that point in time. Very positive stuff. Behind the 1111 as a phenomenon, it dealt with a certain band of energy that was coming in or was available to us during 1987 to, I believe, around 2000. No, I'm so sorry. Maybe 2002, 2003. I think it was. And the reason this time period was so special was because this particular energy, if you decided to kind of give way to it or access it, in your life, was to reflect the things that you needed to change in yourself so that you could ready your vibration to move into that fourth dimensional state. Because if you're holding heaviness with you, you have a heavy sense of the third dimension, you're holding on to grudges, you have guilt, all these negative feelings that hold someone down, you can't rightfully go into another vibration because in a scientific sense it just wouldn't work, right?
So
So
if you see 1111, then you're on the right path.
that's one interpretation that people have, but it was supposed to correspond within that band of energy. It's really to reflect, again, the things that you need to work on in yourself to let go so that you can essentially ascend at some point in terms of vibration.
See, the problem I have with that is that time is a human construct.
Mm-hmm.
So we only see 1111 because humans decided to keep time.
It might not necessarily be a clock that you see the 1111 on. It could be the receipt at the store. It could be somewhere else, but just the seeing of it, and some people will say that it's a trigger, and I don't know how much truth is in this, but they say it's a trigger that unconsciously might start to sort of unlock certain things in our cellular memory as some sort of code. And it's not just the 1111, although that's at the helm. It's right at the forefront. It's any of these consecutive numbers, 222, 333, and so forth, that all have different vibrations that they carry the same way that words do and names carry vibration, that might be able to give you sort of access or awareness of that energy that's around you at that time. So it's a very involved concept, honestly.
Yeah.
So
Definitely an interesting subject, that's for sure.
do you hold any faith in numerology as a whole?
Wouldn't that suggest, though, that everything's preordained, that everything's everything's already picked for you? Does numerology end free will?
That's a very good question. Or is it just another tool that we have to follow a certain path?
Don't you see that? I think that where we end up is where we're supposed to be.
I don't disagree.
You know what I mean? I think that to be able to say, oh, well, I was born at this time, I was born on this day, I have this many numbers in my name, means that this is how my life's going to be. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's possible, right? I mean, that goes into the whole greater, that there's a, if that's true, then there is a greater intelligence that we could never even imagine.
Do you think we come down into this reality with some sort of plan for ourselves? Not necessarily destiny, but, a loose plan that we can, with what's known as free will, choose to follow or not?
The way I look at reincarnation is I think that our souls are basically out to learn certain things. This life, I might learn patience. The next life, I might learn, something else. I think every life teaches you a valuable lesson, and we choose. I think that before we're born, we're able to choose which lesson we're going to learn.
Yes.
Patience, or okay, well, this life, you need to learn this. It's like you're looking at, like, say for instance, I die, and I go to the other side. I'm basically going to take off this coat, and I'm going to hang it on the wall like I've worn that one, right? I'm going to have a whole nother wall full of coats that I still need to wear. And I can pick which coat I want to wear. You know what I mean?
I love that.
But once I put that coat on, that's what I'm going to learn. That's the life I'm going to live. And then when I come back again, I'm going to take that coat off, put it in the used pile, and go for another new one. Now, am I saving the worst for last? or the best for last? Well, I guess we're not going to know. But I think that when I die, I'll remember all of the different coats that I've worn. Does that make sense?
Oh my God, yes. And I love the way that you bring a visualization, with that. It's a really great way to explain it. So what's the end result here? What's the end goal? And what I mean by that is the soul really learning anything, or is it just experiencing for the sake of experience? Because the idea is that if we come from the one source, okay, the all, if you will, that all knows everything, always has, always will, and it's omniscient. So if we come from that, that would stand to reason that we also have a bit of that all knowledge and, all knowing. But the idea is when you come into incarnation, you're lowering your vibration on purpose to forget certain principles so that you may experience the discovery of those in a different way. What do you think?
I think we're here to experience matter, and that's really all we're here to experience. I think that our soul is normally free. You can do anything. You can experience anything with your soul except for matter. What we're learning, and that's another thing. Our soul's emotional.
Yeah, it's a very good question.
Soul, are we able to experience sadness or joy, or are we just flying around in a light stream, like woohoo? I mean, I think that whatever it is that we're supposed to learn, we're gonna learn, and if it takes you 20 lives to learn it, or if it takes you one, you're gonna eventually learn it. So I think you need to try to learn as much as you can. Be open to all possibilities, because we really don't have any idea what is really going on. I mean, there's so much. There's so many experiences to have in the world of matter. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Where
yes.
I can touch something, and that's awesome. When you're dead, or when you're a soul, or when you die, you're not going to have the experience of touch anymore, you know?
Hmm.
So I think that goes away, or you're just living in it's like a matrix reality at that point. You're just thinking your reality. And maybe that's what we're doing now.
Do you think? Okay, so we know that the personality certainly has a preference in terms of experience. Do you think the soul reflects that as well, or do you think it's more benign?
Do you think that my personality is my soul's personality?
No, I'm asking. Well, I'm saying that we know that personalities have a preference in experience. So I like this, I like that, or I don't like this, I don't want that. Do you think the soul thinks along the same lines, or do you think it just sees an experience and says it's an experience? Let me try it.
I think that we're out for experience, no matter how bad or good it is. I think the soul wants to experience matter. If it's a
Mm,
bad experience or a good experience, I don't think it matters.
I agree 100%. And I think you hit the nail on the head with this too. Honestly, I'm right there in line with you in that way of belief. In respect to the soul, what's your thoughts on soul agreements in respect to coming down and having agreements to,
With
be with
another
certain?
soul.
Yeah, I mean, you chose your parents, you chose your first girlfriend, you learn something from each other, you get an experience from each other, and so forth. What are your thoughts on the soul agreements?
I've had this conversation with somebody else before where they say, "Oh, well, let's just say me and you are different souls," and you say, "Hey, I want to be murdered. I want to know what it's like to be murdered.
Hmm.
Will you murder me in our next life?" And you're like,
Hmm.
"Well, I guess, yeah, I guess if that's what you really want, I suppose I'll do that for you." And we're born, and guess what? I murder you.
Hmm.
Now, we're that's starting to dig, I think, into dangerous waters, because you start justifying doing horrible things.
Oh, I understand that.
You
I
know what I
understand that.
mean?
Yes, yes. But we're looking. I mean,
I mean,
it.
no, I do hear what you're saying though. Like the
Yeah.
soul agreements, do they happen? Probably. I hope I'm not, you know, the asshole soul that wants to know what it's like to be murdered. You know,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna make an agreement with some poor soul who's gonna murder me. I mean, that's horrible to put on somebody else. I think. I don't know. I really don't know. See, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have a problem with it. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, let's or you know, like, you really like this girl or whatever, and she's like, well, maybe in the next life, ha ha ha. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that goes on or not.
Very
It'd be
curious.
interesting if it did.
I don't think you could have this sort of conversation with just anybody. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
like
And
I want to know. I want to experience what it's like to have somebody just give me $5 million. Will you give me $5 million? Can we
they
have
may
that?
if
You
I
know what
had
I
it,
mean?
I'd
It
be right
opens
over
up
there.
endless, I think, ridiculous possibilities. I mean,
But you're right. It does get really slippery when you start trying to look at some of the more tumultuous experiences that people have, and there's an element that somebody should be held responsible. This person was a victim of what happened. They didn't have control. If we're looking at the big picture, as we're just talking about now, and right now, I think that's probably as far as we can really take it. Just to talk about it, it would, you know, if that was the case, if in one life or before we came down, say, "Oh, can you murder me?" Sure. "Oh, great. Can you do it for me next time?" "Yeah, sure." No, we can experience what it is. As terrible as it sounds, we're making this agreement. There's probably many ways of looking at that. Now, that being said, when you come down and make that agreement of murdering somebody or doing something drastic like this, you also agree to the consequences that follow. So nobody gets away scot-free. You're still going to deal with that. And perhaps, the notion to let me bring it a different direction. Let's say in a positive sense. Let's say I was an asshole to you in the last life, and we meet up in the ethers, and I go through my life review, and I see that I was an asshole. I'm like, oh man, I made you feel like that. Oh, I feel that. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that at the time. I was in my own head. I was being selfish. All right. Well, do you mind if we get back into another life together where, the dynamic is maybe I can help you? Could I help you and, try to right that karma? Okay. Because karma, as far as I can tell, is not something outside of ourselves. It's something that we create, and we look at it, and it's more of, the reaction of what our actions are. And then we feel something for that because we made somebody feel a certain way that we didn't want. The implications are very large, enormous, if you will, if that's actually the case. So, but something we should talk about going further. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I look forward to watching the first court case where that's used as a defense.
Yeah, well, we all know, I think, how that one would probably turn out. And it doesn't matter because you're still responsible.
On the jury. I mean, if you have a really good argument, right?
Well, in this day and age, my friend, you might be right about that. But again,
you only need the possibility of innocence, right? It's beyond a reasonable doubt. I had a soul contract with this person. I had to. I had no choice.
You know what? If he could produce, or whoever's saying that could produce some sort of physical document indicating that, and it was verified, I'm sure he could get away with it. But that's a a very interesting thing to look at. All right, in respect to the paranormal world and those who decide to research it, we talk about cryptids, we talk about these mysterious things, and a lot of time there's a negative connotation that kind of rides along with this. The abduction was unpleasant. The ghost was demonic, and so forth. And yet people really chase after this sort of negativity. Why do you think there's more of a focus on the negative aspects of the fields that we're talking about rather than the positives?
Well, I think negative is your own state of mind.
Well, if you go ahead.
Some people that might think it negative to jump out of an airplane, yet there's people that jump out of airplanes all the time. I don't want nothing to do with jumping out of an airplane, but people love it. Mm-hmm. It could be the same way. Some people just might get it gets their adrenaline going. They like the fear. They like they thrive on it. Maybe they live more on the lower frequency of life.
That's a good point. Yeah, maybe the vibration is a little bit lower. And I think, in respect to that, yeah, you're drawing in experiences and people based on your own vibration, based on your thoughts, based on your frame of mind. And that's sort of, I think, part of the secret, if you get down to it, that attraction factor. So, yeah, I thought it was really interesting that, these guys, even myself, when I started doing the ghost investigating years and years and years ago, I said, well, I want to go to the most haunted location with the worst energy that's there because I want to feel it. And they backfired terribly on me. But people are out there looking for this, and they're provoking.
You can pick up on different energies. You can definitely pick up on it. Episode 50, we're talking to the guy from Egypt today. He says that the way the pyramids built, the way that the pyramids are, they give off a frequency. There's an energy. It was so strong back when the pyramids were new, but even today it's still like 5%. It's not 100% anymore, but it's still 5. You could still feel that. And there's energy in places where things happen. There really are, like murders or 9/11. I don't know if you have ever been to New York or the 9/11 memorial. That's underneath the ground there. When you're in there, you get that gut feeling, that feeling in your gut. You're picking up on that energy. You're picking up on that frequency of that time. It's still there. It's still there. You can feel it in your gut. The same thing, like if you go to Pearl Harbor and you're standing on the USS Arizona or whatever, I'm sure that feeling is there. The same thing happens where evil happens. You can feel the evil. And some people I guess they like to feel that, you know, they like to feel evil. Or if you go somewhere where something really good happened, it's probably still there, like this feeling of good, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't
Go ahead.
realize.
Oh,
I was
I
just
was
gonna. Yep. Go ahead, Ben.
I was just going to say that these experiences leave an imprint not only on ourselves, but also on the surroundings,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. Why? Especially in relation to the heavier energy, because I think a lot of us can feel that pretty upfront when we get into a situation. How do you think that the energy sort of spills out in the wake of something traumatic and sort of imbues itself in the surrounding material? How do you think that happens? I would suggest it has something to do with vibration, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, whether it's frequency or vibration. I mean, everything really comes down to that, right? I mean, it's what keeps our skin from falling off our bodies. I mean, really. I mean, it's just a vibrating atom, you know.
Hmm.
Everything is it's I don't have any idea, but it's definitely there. Something's there, I mean, I don't know why or how, but it is, right?
I mean, sometimes clairvoyants will walk into a house that has something like this happen, and they're there, for their, I hate the word psychic, but their abilities to be sensitive to these energies, and this person will walk over to a room, and they'll literally start reading the walls from whatever happened, almost like the walls and the material around it are record keepers for events that happen, and I think this could be actually transposed into natural settings as well. So it's very curious why this happens.
Do
And
you think that they're
Yep.
actually reading the walls, or they're looking over into a different dimension, that they're just quantum jumping a little easier than we are?
I definitely don't think it's a literal thing to read the walls. I think that they're picking up the subtle vibrations that somehow have been captured in there. And if I'm saying that, then yeah, we would probably have to bring in quantum jumping or quantum physics at least to sort of understand that phenomenon. But it's phenomenal that people have some accuracy with understanding what happened in an environment simply by stepping into it without any prior knowledge of the activity.
Yeah, or like if there's I hate, we seem to be saying this word a lot, but saying that there's a murdered kid or something, and the cop takes the hat, like the kid's hat, to a psychic, and they hold the hat, and
Hmm.
they're like, oh, this happened,
Hmm.
just from being able to hold the hat. I mean, I find that remarkable. I mean, I don't have any idea how they're doing it, or what's making that possible, but it's definitely why we're into doing this type of show, right?
Absolutely. And I appreciate you bringing up that one aspect too, because I forgot about that way to read. I've had readings where somebody would say, hey, can I, hold on to your watch or something? Or do you have anything on you, like your keys, that I could just hold and pick up the vibration? That to me is incredible. I think that there are sensors, some sort of extrasensory perception. Wow. Extrasensory perceptors in our hands that we're able to feel certain things that our eyes can't see and perhaps other parts of our body might not pick up on. Let's see, I can give you an example. Scanning. There's a phenomenon called scanning where somebody can walk into a room looking for an object, not knowing where it is, put their hand up and pretty much lock onto it, walk over and open up the drawer that this object's in without any prior knowledge. How do you think that happens?
I don't have any idea. Honestly, I think they're where we're all going, if that makes any sense.
Hmm.
They're experiencing a consciousness that we're not experiencing yet. I think we're getting there, where we'll all be like that. I mean,
Mm.
imagine a world where we're all like that.
Oh God, it would be a completely different sort of
That's
utopia.
where I think we're headed. I think some people are ahead of us, and I think some people will be behind us. I mean, in 100 years, there'll be maybe 100,000 people on the earth that you can't communicate with. I have to pick up my phone and call this person. Oh my God. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're lagging behind everybody else. Whereas right now there are people that are up ahead of us. But I think we're all headed to that. I think we're all headed there.
I think that's quite accurate, honestly. It's like, you have somebody who has some of these abilities or what you'd call clairvoyant talents or so forth. You might be right in terms of their evolution. They're a little bit ahead of us. It's like walking around on one leg, not realizing you always had two. And now we're starting to realize that there's another leg that we can stand on, to obviously symbolize the spirituality and the aspects that encompasses. So, man, that's curious. All right, so I think we got time for one more question here. Let's talk about power objects. What do you think about power objects? Some people hold on to certain items that they believe hold some sort of protection for them or some other sort of esoteric power. What are your thoughts on those kind of things?
I think that every object has power, whether it's strong or whether it's weak. I think that there are stones, obviously, that bring certain energies.
Mhm.
I think that there are objects that perhaps that object was made out of this object that had this certain energy. I think that there's energies that get into certain things that like it could be an evil energy too. I mean, the same thing could be said about haunted objects, like the Annabelle doll or whatever.
Mhm.
I think that there's good in objects, and I think that there could be bad too. I think that that's very possible.
Do you think they could be imbued with intention on purpose?
You mean like somebody infused an object with
Yeah,
energy?
yeah, with energy or intention. Yeah,
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Why not?
yeah.
I mean, if they can hold a hat and know where what happened to little Billy, I mean,
Yep.
they can hold it. They can hold a stone and fill it with energy.
I mean, these stones, I mean, that's something that people talk about too, with semi-precious stones and crystals and so forth. I understand, without bringing esoterics into it at all, why some of these stones vibrate the way they do, that there's energy in quartz and so forth. But people are using these stones for esoteric reasons, and they're claiming that they can heal. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it works. I mean, look at the blue quartz. How it holds different energies. I mean, same thing with
Mhm.
like tuning forks. You know,
Yes, yes.
it's all connected. Everything is frequency and everything is vibration.
Yep.
It all comes down to that, and I think that that's really if we can figure out frequency and vibration, we're gonna have everything figured out.
I couldn't agree with you
I
more.
mean, that's what I mean. It holds everything together. I mean, what's keeping me from falling through this chair? I mean, it's no different than the atom that's in the air. On a
Mhm.
molecular level, it's no different. The only difference is that I believe it's a chair, and we all agree it's a chair.
Yes, and that's the collective perception or consensus that we have about our reality that sort of ties us together, I think, in this reality. Now, the chair itself that you're sitting on, I think you can't go through it too because you're in the same frequency band as the chair. So vibrationally, you're on the same level. So you can't just put your hand through. Now, if you were able to, in one way, shape, or form, let's say, take your hand, create some sort of enclosed space that you can put your hand into and control that by creating a magnetic field of sort, electromagnetics, and so forth, to raise the vibration, the overall vibration of that space, let's say one. So if you're able to do that and it's now out of this band of frequencies, you could very easily, I mean, if you could see your hand, put it through the chair. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
It's all so interesting, really, and the more we dig into it, the more and more fascinating it's going to become. I think. I don't even think we're really seeing the whole tip of the iceberg of any of this.
Oh, again, I couldn't agree with you more on that. And this is what makes it so fascinating and this journey so amazing. Finding answers
What,
where
what
we
about
can.
what about the possibility that we're all God? We're
Ah,
all
yeah.
one person.
Hmm.
I mean, that's a theory, right?
Sure. I
We
mean, look
aren't
at
we
it like
all?
an apple. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we're all just like apples on one tree, right?
Yes, yes. And I was going to bring this analogy up of the apple, where if you have one in your hand and you cut it, let's say you cut a piece off of it and you put that aside, well, I mean, that piece is still an apple. It's still apple, came from the same source. So again, back to the oneness, if you're just a kind of a sliver of consciousness at the moment, especially from that oneness, you're still the oneness. You're still the God.
Yeah. And there's
You know?
just, like we're all just one being, and we're using all these little different beings of matter to see things and to do things and to experience all of this at one time. Could it be possible that there's something that intelligent out there where it can independently control all of us?
Hmm. That's a good question. If this oneness is now looking back on itself for the sake of understanding separation or duality, that's something else in and of itself.
Yeah. There's a lot of possibilities, man.
Yeah, it sure is. Well, listen, Michael of Conflict Radio Network. Is I mean, the channel is Conflict Radio Network, but the show is Conflict Radio, right?
Yeah, yeah, and well, there's two channels. There's Conflict Radio Network and Conflict Radio Official, but everything's going over to Conflict Radio Official now. But you can always find us online at www.conflictradio.net.
Excellent. Is there anywhere else that people can find you or get in touch with you if they have their own stories they'd like to discuss and share?
Well, if they want to be a guest on the show, you could just go to conflictradio.net and scroll down to the bottom. There's a contact tab down there. Just fill out and send it over. I've had a couple of guests come on that have contacted me that way. You can find me on Apple iTunes, all of your normal podcast catchers. I guess I'll just go into my normal spiel.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
all of the, Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, iHeart Podcasts, all of the normal podcast catchers, it's all there. And, like I said, the best place really is just go to www.conflictradio.net, and everything's right there.
Beautiful. Well, I want to thank you very much, Michael, for coming on the show tonight and having the conversation you had with me. It's always fun to sit and hear somebody else's experience, especially as someone as versed as you are in this field, and your contact with folks and how we learn from each other is just amazing. And please, everyone, go and check out Conflict Radio. It's a fantastic show. You will not be disappointed if you enjoy what I do here. You'll definitely enjoy what Michael's doing over on his show. So please tune in, check him out. He's always putting stuff up, and he has some very, very awesome guests, very intelligent and sincere folks that come and share their experiences and stories with him. So please check it out. Michael, for the moment, I'm going to wrap up here.
Can I ask one more question?
Oh, please. Absolutely.
I just want to ask you one question. What is, from host to host, what is the one thing that you've learned that's changed your opinion, that you believed going into the show, that you started doing, that you've now changed your opinion on since doing the show? Is there one thing?
Yeah,
Like,
I could.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think I could give you a good one here. And unfortunately, I'll talk to you off camera if you like about this, but I'm not going to divulge too much in front of the camera at the moment. But I have always had a fascination with the Montauk Project and generally just Montauk. I never knew why. I started having dreams and emotions, heavy emotions, and almost like dreaming through daytime, where I was walking and all of a sudden I'd be consciously somewhere else, watching something else, and feeling every bit of emotion that comes from that. And I couldn't place it. There were many other things that kind of occurred along the way that confirmed to me that there was something there. And since I've started the show, because of the people that have come into my life as a result, and had the willingness and the desire to help me explore this avenue, I now feel that I understand my connection with that project and my involvement at whatever level much better than I did before I started the show, because that was a very, very heavy question on my chest. And it was in a lot of ways disrupting my normal capacity to function in everyday life. May I ask you the same question?
Yeah, I think the answer to that would be that I was quite surprised that everything seemed to run together like it did. I didn't expect that.
You mean connection wise?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How it all comes down to, I honestly think everything, all of the sightings that we see, everything, I think it all comes down to our consciousness and the way we experience consciousness.
Man, that's quite the epiphany. Life
All right.
changing.
Well,
It's
I'll
life
let you
changing.
finish up. I'm going to say bye to your chats, your guys in the chat room. So keep talking for a couple minutes so I have enough time to type in a goodbye to them. And
All right.
just remind everybody that episode 50 is going to be starting as soon as we're finished here over on my channel.
Ah, yes, thank you. I'll just reiterate that very quickly for everyone. Please go and check out Conflict Radio episode 50. Will be on. I'm just reiterating what he said. In what time does it go on? At 10 o'clock Eastern time, which would be
Just as soon as we're done with this one.
just as soon as we're done with this one, guys. I expect to see all of you over there. Believe me, you won't be disappointed, and I wouldn't endorse something that I didn't believe in. So, all right, thank you, Michael. I'm gonna take you off the show for a moment. If you stick around here, I'll say my proper goodbyes off camera, and we'll wrap up for the evening.
That's awesome, man. It was great being here. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you, mate. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me here on a very special edition of Dark Hour Paranormal. I want to remind everyone to please like and subscribe to the channel. It helps drastically. Guys, you don't know how much it helps us when we get those likes and those subscriptions. It helps us grow and bring more information and these awesome interviews that we've been putting on. And it's not just my channel. Check out GUFON. Richie G, my good friend, is over there. We've been working together on Third Phase recently to bring you the most current and up-to-date analysis on certain videos that are coming out. And I noticed that a lot of people have been really enjoying that, but I've never really made the formal announcement or accepted it in this respect, and I'd like to take just a moment to do that. I want to thank you, ThirdPhaseOfMoon, for giving me the opportunity to be a part of your team and to explore this world together in the way that we do. It's a very humbling opportunity, and I couldn't be more thankful for this. And Rich from GUFON, I want to extend a special thanks to you as well, my friend. You have helped me so much along the way and have always been a supporting beam for me. Yes, others have helped me as well, but Rich, you've always been by my side, and without making this sound like a sappy love note, thanks very much, mate. I appreciate everything you do, and I look forward to the many hours that we're going to be working together on Third Phase. So that being said, folks, if you'd like to donate to Dark Hour Paranormal, you may do so in the description. There is a PayPal button that you can do that, and I appreciate those who have donated thus far. Thank you so much. Again, that does help the show, and every penny goes right back into it, either for new equipment or to pay for the platforms in order to do this. So thank you, folks, and appreciate everyone being here. I hope you had a great time. We didn't do the video tonight. I thought I'd try something a little different and go back to my roots, and I hope you enjoyed this expose, and I wish that you will join us again in 2 days from now. I have Lon Strickler from the 14 Society and Phantoms and Monsters. So he'll be coming on and returning to Dark Hour Paranormal. We had him back on in July 12th, maybe July 7th. I can't remember the exact date, but he was back in early summer. The first time he appeared alongside of Tobias Whalen and Manny Navarrete. And I had at the time Gutter Gawker with me on that show. So we're going to bring Lon Strickler back. And on Thursday, I'm going to have Tobias Whalen. Friday, this is what we're thinking right now. This isn't set in stone, but we're looking to have Jonathan C. Martin back on the show. It just depends on where he is physically, whether he's in the place where he lives or he's back in his home country of the United Kingdom. So I'll let you know how that goes. Otherwise, I will see you guys on Wednesday, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, 5 o'clock Pacific for more Dark Hour Paranormal. This is Michael Roser signing off. Guys, have a wonderful rest of your evening.